Hello there. In this presentation, I'd like to discuss the neuroscience of human well being, how successor ideology culture is impacting the neural circuitry of human well being, and how empowered humanity theory can impact the brain circuits related to human well being. Not only is the human brain responsible for all of our body functions, it's also the organ for human empowerment. The brain contains about 100 billion neurons and about 100 trillion connections between the neurons. The connections represent our various skill sets, habits, and personalities, and they vary from person to person and even change throughout each person's lifetime. Essentially, the neurons that fire together wire together, and the wiring is based on personal thinking and behavioral habits along with the environments we practice them in. Our wiring is formed and reinforced both wittingly and unwittingly, and is based on our practices. Every waking moment, we are practicing something, and what we practice the most are the connected pathways we fortify. This is why awareness and intentional practice are important to our daily lives and routines. The brain itself is also wired in a particular way. It's wired to change so that we can continue to learn and problem solve throughout our lives. The term that describes this is neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity describes how the brain has plasticity, which means it changes in size, shape, and connections over the course of a lifetime. Neuroplasticity demonstrates that humans are indeed capable of learning new habits, attitudes, and skills. The research of Richard Davidson, or Richie, highlights how well being is a skill. Davidson is a professor of psychology and psychiatry at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He is also the founder and chair of the Center for Healthy Minds. Davidson and his team have identified four neuroscientifically validated constituents of well being, and each of them demonstrates plasticity. Therefore, through intention, attention, and repeated practice, personal well being can be developed just like learning a new language, sport, or musical instrument, and even driving a car are skills. The four constituents of well being are resilience, outlook, attention, and generosity. There's enough data to support the claim that our circuitry to well being as a collective is in a crisis state. Considering these circuits are largely informed by culture, it's worth considering the impact the emerging successor ideology culture has on each constituent of well being. The first constituent is resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from an adverse experience. Different people have different time frames for bouncing back. And what Davidson's research shows is that individuals whose circuits return back to their normal baseline sooner than later have higher levels of well being. I wonder how believing in successor ideology's premise that the world is and has been such a tragic place is due to a designated group of individuals, and all people are innately oppressors or oppressed according to their born into biologies. How does one believing that they are oppressed all the time or that they are oppressors all the time, how do they bounce back? Do they, or do they give up or not try and try again until they excel? How resilient are we without agency? What we know is that this circuitry is shown to modulate after 6 to 7,000 hours of meditative practice. It takes quite a while, but practices that build awareness and equanimity build the pathways to resilience. Therefore, empowered humanity theory based practices that build awareness and equanimity cultivate the neural circuitry of resilience, which is key to human well being. The second constituent of well being is outlook, specifically a positive outlook towards self, others, circumstances, and outcomes. Davidson describes it as the ability to see another human being as having qualities of innate basic goodness. Thinking about successor ideology implications, it makes me wonder about the circuitry in individuals who use critical theory, or one of them specifically, for navigating their daily experiences. The concept of a critical consciousness means seeing the world and all experiences in it through a perceived negative lens. This is a key constituent of being woke or successor ideology in modern culture, because it makes me wonder how someone that is viewed as an oppressor can also be seen as having basic innate goodness. I'm also curious if successor ideologies focus on dismantling, undoing, and deconstructing even recognizes goodness as something worth pursuing, since it openly rejects the concept altogether. The lack of a positive outlook cultivates a lack of personal and relational well being. The empowered humanity theory attitude of a dignity lens promotes cultivating the idea of seeing the innate goodness of all by providing the awareness that beneath our biologies and personalities, we share in our humanity, and promoting that attitude as one for intra and interpersonal communication. Davidson's research showed that practicing loving kindness meditations and compassion practices strengthen this constituent. Modulation was observed in this circuitry after only practicing compassion for 30 minutes a day for a 2-week period. The conclusion here is that empowered humanity theory's attitude of a dignity lens and compassion practices have been shown to cultivate the well being constituent of positive outlook. The third constituent of well being is attention. Attention is the simple act of noticing without judgment, objective awareness of thoughts and behaviors occurring in the present moment, in real time. Davidson's research concludes that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. Successor ideology culture in general is a way of judging the world in a particular predetermined way that rejects the notion of objectivity. I wonder how that impacts the circuitry of attention. On the other hand, a key component of empowered humanity theory is focusing attention. This is a practice that builds awareness and equanimity. Therefore, empowered humanity theory is a framework that strengthens the attention constituent of well being. The final neuroscientifically validated constituent of well being is generosity. Davidson's research concluded that individuals that engage in generous and altruistic behaviors show activity in the circuits in the brain that are key to fostering well being, activated in a way that shows more enduring activation than other kinds of positive incentives. Successor ideology culture puts limits on generosity, does not openly promote generosity, and in some ways rejects the concepts altogether. A phrase I've heard repeatedly throughout the past 5 to 10 years is, "We tried being nice in the 80s and 90s." A popular charter school network recently abandoned the motto, "Be nice and work hard," in the name of anti racism. So I wonder about the future development of this circuitry to well being. What I do know is that practices that build kindness and compassion for self and others is the primary means for cultivating the neural circuitry of generosity. Thinking about how the brain is wired to adapt to the culture that it's placed in, and the fact that our current culture is negatively impairing humankind's neural circuits associated with their well being, I believe we are at a crucial point for the health and well being of our species, the now and the future us. The conclusions drawn here are that the attitudes, practices, and habits of successor ideology culture is detrimental to personal and relational well-being, and that empowered humanity theory is a framework that can cultivate the neural pathways to personal well-being. We are indeed at a crossroads. One path proves itself to be destructive to our well-being, and one proves to be fruitful. The unfortunate part is that the most fruitful path is the least traveled because it's the least known. Discarding the practices, attitudes, and habits that contribute to our decline and adapting to the attitudes and practices of empowered humanity theory will have a profound impact on our personal and collective well being.